And now, everyone, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to your host, Steve Kane.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's going to be a great discussion today. Welcome to the Hall of Fame 8 and to Full Sail University. We've got a live panel discussion today. What I think is probably one of the coolest ones here at the Hall of Fame, the pitfalls and the benefits from working at home. We've got a really nice eclectic group of panelists here. Down in the end, we've got Michael LaPlante that works some really cool cybersecurity stuff. He's watching everybody as you go. Has worked with some small companies like Facebook and Google and Apple and that kind of stuff. Mr. Leon Hopkins there, a 1985 grad, I think maybe one of the earliest grads here, has seen every show in the whole wide world, the coolest shows you could ever think of, from Paul McCartney and Janet Jackson, and has just been touring the world, so he has definitely been working remotely as well. Sitting here in the middle here, we've got Mr. Chance Glasco, our international Doghead Studio VR game specialist. So great at working with different teams and collectively all around the globe. And I think that takes a special talent. I hope you get to tell us some more about your stuff. And then lastly, Phil here is the internet marketing branding genius here. And if you ever want to stay popular and stay prudent from home, you obviously need to be able to brand yourself. So I think we've got a great eclectic crowd here to start discussing today's discussion about the pitfalls and the benefits of working at home. And, I've been thinking a lot about this because we all work in kind of different capacities, whether it's online teaching or you're working as a company or with a company doing remote things like Leon, or whether you're working in third-party type of relationships and having your own company, or Chance running your own type of thing going on. So we've all got our own little specialty, I think, that no matter what degree program, you're going to get something out of this panel. So I appreciate y'all all coming together. Let's give a big round of applause for our panelists here. And I think I'm just going to kind of throw some questions out there, and we can jump in as we want to and as you feel comfortable, and get us all some airtime. But I think one of the biggest thing is communication. What tools have you found, whether it's email or chat or whatever, video chat, email, to communicate with your clients or with your team and not lose the emotion? Because as we all know, you've all gotten that email or that text, and because it might have had caps on or something, you're like, why are they yelling at me or something? And there's so much lost in that face-to-face. What kind of technology have you been using to let your clients or your teammates really sense your emotion? Because that's why we're all here, right?
Mm-hmm. Before I answer the question, when you go to a restaurant and you're so impressed by the person who takes your order and doesn't write anything down, I feel that way about you right now. Those intros were really good. So that was amazing that you just did that.
It's from his head.
Yeah, I'm like, wow. So I have found that in person or any form of video is better than the phone. I really dread the phone. I'll do it if I have to, but any opportunity, particularly if I'm working with someone for more than a few minutes, if it's more than like an intro call, I almost always require Skype or some kind of video. I need to see your face. I need to see your facial expressions, because a lot of how I react, a lot of what I learn about you as a person, that unfortunately if I don't have the privilege of being face-to-face with you, then I at least need Skype or FaceTime, some kind of opportunity to see your face. And on the receiving end of that, if you're working as a strategist, a consultant, or someone that's getting paid to listen, it's in your best interest to be able to see that person. I think sometimes people can get mean on the phone. They won't get mean if you can see them face-to-face, just like how it would be in person. So I've always found if video is an option, I always go that route.
And I would say, Phil, you're definitely talking from the perspective of working with people maybe on the start of a new relationship, right? Where, Chance, you might be communicating with people that you've already been around for a while that might know you already, right?
So roughly like 7 or 8 months ago, I started a new company, Doghead Simulations, and we're actually developing VR conferencing and collaboration software. So I actually spend hours every week in virtual reality with everyone from work, and we're having meetings in actual three-dimensional space like it's real life.
Wow.
So something that is we've been able to, we use Google Hangouts as well, which is kind of Google is our main suite, but as far as like all of our meetings are in VR. So something we get over like Skype Hangouts instead of VR is social presence, right? So with the HTC Vive, we're tracking your head and your hands, and so when I talk to someone, I'm getting actual body language. And so because you have that stereoscopic 3D space, you can move around, you actually feel like someone there is present with you.
Right.
In a level that you don't get in video, because you naturally tend to stand in a circle when you're talking with people. You can't do that in Skype. There's no circle.
Certainly.
You're not working within any space. And so we're basically replicating real life meetings within virtual reality.
That is the wave of the future, wouldn't you think?
I hope so. I know it's a big idea. We just have to be the one to execute it correctly.
Me too. Well, so Leon, you had an interesting career so far when it put you out traveling, having to keep in touch with headquarters, but now you're at headquarters wanting to keep in touch with other people, right?
Yeah, I mean, after I saw electricity get invented, from my perspective, I've been able to see the whole development of communication go almost full circle. And what I mean by that is, back in the earlier times of communicating with employees or people in general, it was either a phone or in person. In person was always a good thing, because I think Phil brings up a good point. Having that communication face-to-face, is great. But now that the world's moving a little quicker, we have electricity.
I love this guy.
So we're cruising right along. So now we have social media, we have all these options, and the written word can be misinterpreted a lot. I think in communicating, from my point of view, it depends on the situation at hand. If I'm talking to a client and it's a very, it's an important topic that you have to get across a point, you really would love to do it in person. An email isn't effective. A text isn't a good idea. That's not very personable. And when I'm dealing with our road staff people out on the road and they're really going quick and moving, then the text works for me and them, because they go right to me. Hey, do you want me to go to gate 21 and go to Boston, or am I going home? You figure that out real quick. And then, so we have to communicate like this. So I think you have to qualify the type of communication you're looking at. But in general, things that require some emotional discussion, or the importance of the topic is more than just an assignment maybe, or that could be important, but a particular fact. If it involves more than that, you want to try to have face-to-face. The way I keep up with our road staff people is I go to as many shows in Dallas, where I live, that a lot of our tours come through. So I'll that's how I keep up with people, and then I'll visit the offices, and I tend to be around the offices when we're the busiest, and I know that there's people around. So I need that FaceTime with people. It's very important.
So, Michael, you've got an interesting little thing, because everybody's used to security guys being the non-personable ones, right? But you've got to win over clients to prove that you're the guy to make sure that they're nice and secure, right?
Yeah, so I think everybody's kind of touched on it. The FaceTime, Google Hangouts, all of that's kind of important. So I'll come at this communication from a different perspective of one thing when I switched to being a full-time remote worker that I really learned about doing it is, from a communication perspective, a lot of things will always get taken out of context. So there's never such a thing as over communication.
Right.
So whenever I'm having to convey something through email or through text or through a Slack channel or whatever messaging medium that you use, I'm always going to over communicate to the point where it seems like it's annoying. Like, oh my gosh, like you're walking to the shower right now. Like, do you really need to tell somebody that? But that's important because somebody gets your sense of text. So a lot of things get taken out of context, and at least then they know like you're joking around, because that stuff gets lost from face-to-face conversations. So it's really important to know how to over-communicate, and communication's hard in general. But the more you get used to over-communicating and conveying everything, the easier it becomes. And then you realize it bleeds into everything else you do. So then you over-communicate to everybody else, and they love you for all of the over-communication that you tell them most of the time.
I totally agree with you, and I think that all of us will agree that we would rather catch something before a mistake happens and re-explain it than have to deal with a mistake. And I think one of the suggestions I would have in over-communicating is that last bit in saying, just to make sure we're on the same page, or just to clarify, you want this to happen, and lay out the type of thing so it would give you an opportunity to say, yes, amen, go for it, or whoa, actually, I want you to go to this gate and go home instead of keep going on the tour, or something like that. So great questions, or great answers to that. So check this out. When we're at home, we've got our own comfort level, right? We can walk around in our t-shirt if we want to. When you are in the office, though, sometimes if you've got a family there, it might be difficult for family members to understand that, hey, I'm in the office right now. We're lucky that I get to work across the hall instead of across the town. So how have you managed the family aspects of managing interruptions? Because I want to make clear that not every interruption is a negative interruption. There's positive interruptions when the kid comes in and says, hey, Daddy, look what I did today at school, right? That's a positive interruption, but interruptions are still interruptions. So I think that in order to stay effective and happy at home, you need to be able to manage the interruptions effectively. So how have you folks managed to keep that going for yourselves?
Yeah, I live in Santa Monica, so I have a one-bedroom apartment because that's all I'm getting with my budget. So I wish I had a three-bedroom apartment and could theme each room, and one of them would be an office. But what I actually did early on was turn my bedroom into an office because I don't sleep, I work, and I don't need a living room, and I turned my living room into a bedroom, so it's like more of a studio apartment. So I've actually turned my bedroom into my office so that I can shut the door, and the door means don't come in, I'm working.
Right.
And then so that works for part of the time. The other part of what I've discovered over the last, I'd say the last year, in that one of the benefits, which I'm sure will come up, of working remotely is being able to work from anywhere. So I am living proof that you can get the job done from any country in the world. For me, I've discovered co-working spaces. For example, WeWork. If you've lived or visited any major city in the US, there are already WeWorks popping up in many other brands, where for me, traveling internationally, I love going to WeWork because it's decorated the same. I'm guaranteed to have high-speed internet. It's a familiar environment for me in a brand new place. And this is a bit dramatic, but I have a WeWork office at the WeWork that is 1 block away from my apartment. But it's worth it for me to invest in that because I can switch up my environment at home, walk 5 minutes to my office, and be instantly more productive. That's my break, is the walk, the commute from home to WeWork. And even though it's 1 block away, that switch up allows me to take a break and get back into the zone. So that's kind of my own weird system. For the months that I'm not in LA, I get an office, or I use WeWork and use their WeWork Commons. They should pay me for this. WeWork's Commons membership, which allows you to, use 1 credit per day to work at any WeWork in the world.
Oh, wow. So
it costs you $25 for a day, and you can work from 9 until 6. So I don't get a cut on that, just to reinforce that. But that's my system, so it's a little bit weird, but it works perfectly for me.
Yeah, so I've been living, the last year and a half, I've lived in Lisboa, Portugal, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Nashville, Seattle, and now Orlando as of a week ago. And so most of my time was spent in Rio de Janeiro, and it's a small 1-bedroom studio, and I lived like 2 streets from favela. I don't know if you know what favela is, but if you've seen like City of God or Elite Troop, it's basically a really extreme ghetto in the hills with lots of drug dealers and stuff. So the funny thing is in Rio, when the police come and they're entering the favela, the banditos, which is like bandits, translates to, they shoot off fireworks to alert the entire favela that the police are here. But they also shoot off fireworks when the local team wins a football game. So like, I don't know if there's like, when I'll be working and, even I've had some nice Sennheisers, which will block most of the sound, but when there's fireworks 2 streets over, I'm like, all right, is there going to be a shootout or did Flamengo just win the football game? But it was,
I think that's both the positive and the negative interruptions, right?
Yeah. And so there's a lot of sound interruptions in Rio de Janeiro. Sao Paulo is a lot more chill. Rio is just very diverse and it's a very cultural experience, as you could call it.
How do you get work done there?
So yeah, but the good thing about with VR, it's just kind of you're blocking off your ears and your vision. You're there, So even if I'm in a small apartment when I go into VR, the environment is as big as the environment we created. So, yeah.
Very, very practical. Leon, you've got
I got some good ones for you.
I was going to say.
So I through my career, I started in Dallas. The company Showco got acquired by Clair in Pennsylvania. I did make a transition and a move. I actually work at home quite a bit. And you know what, I've been in an office for many years on, as my career went from point A to B, but what Phil said kind of resonated a little bit. When you leave an office, you close the door, you walk out, you disconnect. When you work at home, I don't think, of course, I have a hard time disconnecting anyway, because I have so many people that need things at whatever hour. But you have to find ways to disconnect, and it's kind of a healthy thing to do, The whole concept of working remotely, it's not really all that complicated. It's not as great as it sounds sometimes, because you don't disconnect if you're not careful. Sounds like you're in your home environment and you're kind of in a freedom mode, but work still has to be done. My wife has chickens, so there's a rooster, and he keeps parking under my window. And so I don't want to be talking to a client, no, it's a true story, but so that would be my interruption of the days, the rooster walking around the house. But I do a lot of traveling to get to the offices, and I'll spend weeks on end, in certain places. But that's my remote story, remotely.
I dig it.
Yeah, for me, I live over in Tampa, so the cost of living is a little more affordable than California. So I have a 3-bedroom house, so I do have a bedroom that's specifically for an office that when I leave that, I shut the door and I don't go back in there. So it does give me a good way to disconnect. And when I am traveling and going to different locations, I would say invest in a really good pair of headphones, because when people know that I'm out and I've got headphones on, they know not to bother me. And somebody can sit and stand over my shoulder right behind me and yell in my ear, and with my headphones, you can't hear anything, so they can continue to do that, and I'll probably see them on my screen and laugh that they're behind me, but I'm not going to talk to them because I'm busy working. And then the other option is I also live by myself, so there's going to be no family interruptions because nobody's going to come and knock on the door as well.
It's Girl Scout cookie season,
Yeah, it is Girl Scout cookie, but with headphones on, you don't hear the doorbell.
He's not even going to hear that they're knocking.
I was going to add one little thing in my world is when you get, I find when I have to make fairly significant decisions in a quick time, which usually involves lots of work, needing lots of people and lots of that, I do my best thinking outdoors. I don't think in an office very well anymore for some reason. I have to go be in if I go outdoors for some reason, I can figure things out better. And I mull it through my head and I can walk outside, and the openness of the air gives me a kind of a fresh view of life, And being in an office, I believe, is not, I don't think it's healthy. Quite frankly, sitting at a desk all day is really not what you want to do. If you have a desk job, that's fine. But you see all these new tables they're making that lift up and down, and you sit on this round ball, and you gotta keep your body moving around. I think that's a fact after all the years of studying health conditions in our society. But stress can, in a type of position that some people get into, you have to find a way to manage that, and a lot of it is you find your own way to do that. Sometimes it's called time off.
Yes, well, let's move into that, time management. Working in Nashville a little bit too, I got called to drive to Atlanta for a freelance gig or fly to here or there, But something interesting when we're working remotely, the whole world is now at your fingertips, and it's international, and there's time zones. One of the things I found neat when I was learning more about Phil is he says at the end of the day at 5 or 6 o'clock, I switch to my West Coast clients because they're still in the middle of their afternoon, and I keep on working, which is a great testament to it's not just an 8-hour job. It can be a 12 or a 15-hour job. Leanne, you've got tours going all over the world. You've got to communicate, I'll get it out there one day, with people all over in different time zones. So this brings me to the idea of sleep or lack of sleep. As Full Sail students know, right? We've got labs all in the middle of the night. And I will tell you that, and all of us will probably tell you that is great training for starting your career. I know that in the recording studios, it was middle of the night watching analog machine meters jump over to the Pro Tools meters and such, and trying not to fall asleep when you're, getting that tape going on. But so let's talk about keeping yourself healthy and maintaining a schedule, because if you're working with people all over the world or all over the country or whatever, you've got to be able to maintain a certain level of acuteness. Right, in your conversations, they don't want to know that, dude, it's 3 o'clock in the morning here, what am I doing? Or I've got a call with Japan this morning and they're 12 hours on the other side and they want to have it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm 2 in the morning here. So what are tricks that you've done, whether it's cat naps or Cubana caffeine or whatever it is, Red Bulls, I think we got it going on. But what's something that you do to stay in shape and to keep your body up? My personal is water. I will down a water, and that does more for me, I think, in the very start of the day to get it moving and grooving, and then I can slowly sip on a coffee. And I found that cat naps, being able to master that 10 or 20 minute little nap so you can have a nice, good conversation at 6 p.m. or 9 p.m. if you need to.
Yeah, I'll take it first this time, Phil. The cat nap thing is super important. And one thing I've learned that when you're working from the house, you fall into this habit of there's no sense of time. There's no water cooler chats. There's nobody coming up to your desk to interrupt you. So you have to give yourself those forced interruptions. So I schedule 90-minute blocks of time where I'm super productive. I'll put my phone away, and then I'll get up and go for a walk for 20 minutes. I'll call somebody. I'll talk to them. And, of course, they're in the middle of the day, so like, hey, why are you calling me? Do you ever work? But that's also the joy of being able to work remotely. You can plan this, and then that way you can have those meetings at midnight. And one of the other things I do when I travel that I've learned to deal with jet lag and dealing with that loss of time is I still balance everything around Eastern time zone. So everything that I do is based on the Eastern time zone. No matter where I'm traveling, I keep my watches set to that. That way I always am around that time. That way my sleep cycles and everything stay the same.
That's a great tip.
So working from Rio and Sao Paulo, I'm 3 hours ahead of Eastern, 6 hours ahead of our team in Seattle. So it'd be normal for me to sleep in until like 10:30 every morning because I don't want to wake up super early compared to everyone else.
Right.
So I don't really take any naps. I stay awake the whole time, try to sleep at night. For exercise, I've been in Brazil, so I've been training jiu-jitsu there for a long time. Anyone here train by any chance? Just you two? Wow.
Yeah, we got 3 martial artists.
That's a requirement to be able to choke someone out to be a panelist, I guess. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
And so that's great because that's for when you're in a new country, you go to any sort of event. I'm there learning Portuguese as I'm learning how to train. As I'm training, so I'm training my language and I'm training myself physically. And so when I do really rigorous activity like jiu-jitsu or MMA, Muay Thai, I get a lot of energy afterwards, And so as someone who's always behind a desk or traditionally always behind a desk, my rest is actually the opposite of typical rest.
We were just training last night and he's like, are you singing? As we're sort of like, that's how I get it done,
Go ahead, Phil. Hopefully it wasn't Michael Bolton.
Yeah, it was not.
For those grads, or I should say students that will soon be grads that are thinking about moving to LA or to the West Coast, it's beautiful, but it is the worst, arguably the worst time zone to be in if you're doing business around the world. Because I wake up and I'm immediately stressed when I open my phone and I have 40 unread emails from people in London that are wrapping up their day. Oh, yes. Yeah, so I have as many clients in the UK as I do in LA. And so I get to start my day early, which I like, but the only way that I can handle this is through structure. So I only do phone calls on Tuesday. Unless someone is dying, don't call me. Unless you've scheduled a time using my calendar link, which every client I have has handy, for Tuesday. The type of work that I need, I just can't have, from experience, I just can't have the day fragmented with little conversations and little, interruptions.
Sporadicism.
I just can't get anything done. So for me, I have a day of the week, and if you think that seems crazy, it's not. If you'll see, it's great, because if Tuesday passes and then, Wednesday, Thursday, people are like, hey, let's chat. Not today. I got things to do. And if I, spend that time on you instead of doing what I need to do, then people are going to be unhappy. So that's one way that I structure that. I try and get 8 hours of sleep. At the time of going to Full Sail, I was like, I can't imagine. I was in entertainment business masters. I can't imagine being in one of those crazy programs where they have classes at 2 a.m.
Right.
Oh my God. But now I'm actually kind of jealous of those people that do have that, because that, while it could be irritating at the time, trains you to be able to function at a high level with little amount of sleep, which I still can't do. I wish I could. I think I'm getting better at it. The last piece of advice, if you do end up traveling, if you're here, you're obviously interested in working remotely, or you already are, travel will inevitably be something that you do. I have learned to actually start to adjust to the time zone of where I'm going, usually 2 days in advance. So if I'm traveling, for example, on the weekend, Friday, I'll start to actually make that transition. I'll be sleep deprived for that first night, sleep 3 or 4 hours, so that then I can start to actually switch. Sometimes if I'm flying and speaking at a conference, for example, in April, I'm in Dubai for 1 day, for 30 hours.
That's fun.
And to do a talk, and I arrive at 3 a.m., do a talk 6 hours later, and then I leave. I don't have time to adjust, so I have to actually block in my calendar, get on to Dubai time before I arrive, and that's the only way that I'm able to do it with that quick of turnaround. Ideally, I go somewhere for 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. That's how I like to travel, but it's not always an option.
Scheduling is quite a thing. You've got to have it down. One of the things I do is I'll take an Excel spreadsheet and I'll mark it down every half hour and drag it down and literally type in, even if it's lunch or phone calls, emails. And Leon, I bet you are a scheduling mastermind when it comes to that. And you almost have, when you're in position, you almost have to be CDO about it, which is OCD, but I had to alphabetize it. Right? So, because when you're on that live schedule, it is all about that. They're still laughing. This is great.
Yeah, I like
so,
that.
And the part I was going to make to that, and to tie in Chance's point as well, is I found myself, if I had an 80-hour week, if 3 of them were in the dojo, it was easier than if I had a 77-hour week without exercise. It gives you the energy to keep on going. So what about the scheduling and such?
Well, on the top, this whole thing ties together. When I think of, first of all, the health and travel, to me, they go hand in hand. I know from my experiences on the road that you can get yourself pretty worn out. I remember I did a tour, we did 6 shows on, 6 shows over 8 days on 3 continents. And in your body clock, eventually you can get really, the job demanded it. But so it was actually a pretty, your body clock goes, what are you doing? You sleeping? What are you up to? I kind of wish I knew now, or knew then what I know now about health. I think you have an advantage in your age group here to take advantage of a lot of the great advances in health and medical, and get yourself more, prepared. But that's that aspect of it. And then in my position as the road staff manager, because I've done it, I'm very sensitive to the employees we put on the road. I can kind of tell by talking to them who's tired, who needs a break. And my philosophy is not to run people too hard. When I started, we didn't have that many road people, and you got back on a flight, you came in the front door, you went out the back door with a ticket in your hand, and you were gone. So it was very demanding, and I think now we're in a position we have a little flexibility in our road staff that some people might need a breather. It's like having your two teams that you can kind of shift around and let everybody, kind of have a personal life too. But the scheduling is pretty wild. I schedule against a target that I can't see, and that means the touring industry doesn't know what it's doing all the time. I truly don't know what March is going to be like exactly. I have a clue, but we have salespeople that are out bidding on work all the time, and that crew demand eventually will come to me, and so I have to kind of be preemptive in my own mind on how I figure things out. And I go to sales meetings. I get a read on what's going on, and logistics is a big part of it. And we use a database. When I started doing crew scheduling, there were 18 people. And I could go, well, Billy's going to be home in a week. He can do it. Now it's, there's over 200 with another 80 subcontractors, plus a whole nother staff of 40 in Europe. So a database is really helpful. But you've got to have that, I try to talk to as many people as I can to keep up with what, you got to listen to people talk to know how they feel and what they're up to. But, so, you just don't want to be too disconnected on that level. And when you're working with employees and other people that are in your team, you have to keep up with that. I have help. I have people that are learning to do the things I do. So it's
Very good. So maybe let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how you promote yourself when you're working, because again, in different capacities, some of us might feel secure when we're working remote from a company that we're working with full time. Others are looking to constantly get freelance work and try to put yourself in front of people. And so we've got a combination, and our students are going to have a combination of different careers that you're going to, because not everybody is going to get that full-time position. You might have 3 or 4 part-time positions that that require your time, and something that I think is worth mentioning too, whether it's somebody like Chance that's got your own company, or somebody like Leon that has got a large company, is there's politics in every single company that you get into, whether it's the post office or Clair or Doghead or whatever it is. So how do you manage those kind of aspects of, if you're needing to promote yourself, or if you're just needing to give your boss that time that is, and I know we've already covered communication. I think this goes something a little deeper than communication, to let you know that I'm still in the game here. I'm still here, as well as I'm trying to get these other things if you're in the part-time world. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, I could talk 24 hours straight about this topic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But
Exactly.
I think what I've learned, and in interacting with students this week, reinforcing that we can't put too much weight on a sales pitch, because we're all of us on stage, watching online, in this room, are now just automatically rejecting a sales pitch. We just have learned to ignore it. I had, growing up, I don't know why my parents had this, but we had a pet parrot. And I had friends that come over, and the parrot would squawk, or I'd be on the phone, and the parrot didn't like we were on the phone, and it would squawk, and I didn't even hear it. And that's kind of how we all react to advertising now. We just don't even pay attention. But the way to get business is through relationships, through creating friendships, through creating a bond. The students that I could hire here at Hall of Fame are people that I've had conversations with. People have handed me their resume, and I'm like, that's cute, but I don't really want it. Some employers do. I don't care about your resume. I'm not going to read it. Instead, I'm going to have a conversation with you. If you're clear about your expectations and what value you bring to the table for me, then I can immediately place you into an opportunity if I know of one. And so you might not know what that is yet. You might not be able to, communicate that just yet, that's okay. That's why you're here, to figure that out. But it's not what you want. It's about the value that you give others. If I'm bringing you onto a project, it's because I can sell that project to a client. You can be a part of it and be paid for that. But that's how you have to think of it. It's the value you bring to the table, not the sales pitch that we're all going to ignore.
Yeah, I'm kind of reiterating what you just said, but if it looks like you're selling yourself, then you're doing it wrong. Yeah. So what I do, since I'm not so much promoting myself, but promoting my company, is try to get involved as a guest speaker with as many expos as I can. And, don't just go there, do your talk and leave. Like, talk to people. And the more you engage communities, the more helpful you are. You're basically promoting yourself without promoting yourself. Because the more you give back, the more people are interested in what you're doing and want to interact with you. So,
I think from my position, I've watched, I've got my career that I could talk about, but I've actually have seen more careers over the several decades of doing what I've done, and I can tell you that no matter how experienced you are and how good you are, how good you might think you are, or how if I go do a gig tomorrow and I don't know the people, it doesn't matter what I've done. It matters not. It only matters what you do on the site and how you react to problems and how you handle yourself. And some of the biggest advice I give our new employees is to, you want people to like you. That's important, right? We talk about this a lot, what weighs more, technical ability or people skills? And I'm pretty certain people skills outweighs what you can do with a mixing console, because you've got to be in a team environment and be able to work around other folks. And you kind of earn the mutual respect. It doesn't just show up automatically. And our employees go from tours to tours, so they have to reinvent themselves in front of a new client, and they can't think that because they did great last week that next week is just fine. So you have to be very aware how you interact with people.
And if you don't mind me jumping in here, Mike, because we've got some interesting, again, a very eclectic panel, and some of you are going to interview with people that are more in Leon's generation, which is totally awesome. The experience that this man brings to the table is different than what Michael brings in on a security type of level and on that younger Gen X kind of generation. And when you're interviewing these folks, how could they get your security that I will do well remotely and you won't have to watch over me, especially as they're getting into this world? Because unless you're going to work for yourself, right, which it's easy to trust yourself because hey, I can either waste time at home or I can be productive at home. But if I'm trying to convince Leon or Michael that I would be good for you and I can manage myself at home, what sort of qualities are you looking for? What do you want to, I don't want to say what do you want to hear, because we're not trying to sell that, but what do you look for? What's that spider sense that you're grabbing when you know somebody can work well remotely with you or for you?
So I can jump in here real quick and take this. So as a programmer, I'm in this very unique situation where we're building something and putting it out into the world. And when you work remotely, nobody's looking over your shoulder. You can't do busy work. So it's very much the output of work you're doing. So you very quickly can tell, is this person actually working or is this person slacking off? So when somebody comes in and we're hiring somebody, we usually give them a project, a test project, and it's a paid project, and they get to do it. And we just give it to them. We say, here's the specs, here's what you need to do. We need it done by Friday. And that's it. We let them go. They can ask questions. They can refer to us. They can email us, video chat us, do whatever we want to do, because this gives us the opportunity to see how they're going to communicate, how they're going to promote themselves to us. Are they going to do the work? And that's a very easy tell for us on how we're going to hire somebody from inside a company perspective versus running our own company. Very good. Very good. Leon?
Yeah. I think, we look for, it's easy to want to work for a company that does all these big bands. One of the things that I look for are the folks that want to work for the company. Because the artist and the touring, that's by default, that's what we do. It's like I want to work with you because you guys do big bands. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of what we do. If we do all kinds of bands, small, big, whatever. But you know what I'm saying? So if you're going to work for a company, you want to work for a company because you believe that there's a growth potential for you within that company, and that you like the culture, that you've learned about a company before you apply, you know. We have competitors. There's a lot of good companies out there, but go study, find out what they're about. You know, so that's kind of important to us to see if they see the picture of what we're doing as a complete team, as a company, everybody together. So that's important.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to stand out, find out who your hiring manager is going to be if you want to work for a company, and take the time to email them. It could be somebody here at Hall of Fame Week. Go up and actually talk to somebody and say, hey, I've had a couple students that come up and go, hey, Michael, I love the work that you do at FireEye. And then that's it. I'm like, oh, what project have you seen that I work on? Because nothing that I work on is public. So they just come up with this random stuff to try and start a conversation. But they don't actually do the research into me. So I know there's a little bit of fake there. So they're right there. They're not promoting themselves in a good light. So to take that extra 15 minutes of time on your end to do that research is going to be immense to promote your own brand for yourself.
If you can't trust your employees to work remotely, you probably shouldn't have hired them in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So I bet for you, Chance, that's very deadline driven, right? I imagine when you're looking for a product out of your employees.
Yeah, we have like 2-week sprints. You know, we use Jira within VR, so we're using Jira to manage all of our bugs and our tasks. And so we'll get together at the beginning of the week and see where we're at, the progress we made, to see what we want to prioritize, stuff like this. So kind of the same meeting you'd have with like a bunch of Kanban board with a bunch of cards, and just go through, stand around, and talk it out.
So let's shift gears yet again and talk about some fun things. What is the coolest part about working remotely for you? And let's take it on a personal level, because I think all of us are looking for something different, you know, because we know it's, you know, you got your own schedule or that kind of stuff. For me, getting to the dojo and getting to a golf course is important. You know, you've got to be able to manage and have that little off time, because the off time is where I think the creativity. If you haven't seen Rob Coble on campus, Rob tells a great story about 2 guys chopping wood. And one guy goes at it, and the older guy, after an hour, he takes a break. And the young guy says, now's my time to get ahead. And he keeps chopping. And then after the next hour, the old fellow takes a break, and the young guy keeps on chopping. Well, by the end of the day, the older man had cut twice as much wood. And he says, how did you do it? Every time I saw you, you were taking a break. He says, but I was sharpening my axe. You never saw me sharpening my axe. And sometimes we've got to actually sharpen our axe to get moving ahead. So what kind of things do you do to sharpen your axe?
I love leaving America, even though I worked really hard to just get my green card last week. I love going to places where I don't have to hear about Kim Kardashian or Donald Trump. So, and listen, I'm guilty as charged for contributing to it, because I've talked about both of them in the news. So, you know, it's hypocritical, but so instead of spending money on overhead, every single person that works for me works remotely, all over the world, not just over the US, but I've got people who work for me in Canada, Mexico, Norway, Eastern Europe, Asia. And so rather than spending money on an office that is unnecessary, you rent a shared desk at a co-working space, and I spend that money to travel. I go rent an Airbnb with my business partner, and we go to Sweden, where instead of conversations about which celebrities are getting divorced or who's going to become president, is conversations about, like, what are you doing to become happy? Are you fulfilling your life's goals? You know, I do not get inspiration here. I just don't. I get inspiration when I travel around the world to places like Sweden or Kyoto, Japan, you know, or South America is going to be my first time this year. I'm going to Colombia in a few months, and I just got back from Mexico City, and all places around the world. I get inspiration elsewhere, and that makes the work that I do here and around the world better. So that's where I spend my resources, and because I love to travel, I have made that a part of my brand. I've made it a part of what I do and how I inspire others, and all of that is possible because I can work remotely. See how I
like it.
Yeah, you like that. Yeah.
Kind of, Rebecca.
Yep, I agree 100% with Phil just said. I guess, yeah, exactly that. But something, when we first started developing Roomy for remote VR collaboration, we were thinking, we were like, hey, hashtag save $1 trillion, because around the world, businesses spend over $1 trillion on actual business trips, right? Flying around the world. And then we realized, wait, that's one angle, but the other angle is, I'm saving, I'm traveling less because I'm going to meetings in VR, but I'm also traveling more because now I can travel to anywhere I want to go,
right.
Sweden, Sao Paulo, Brazil, wherever, and work from there. So it's basically I'm trading traveling that I don't want to do for traveling that I do want to do now that I can work remotely in VR.
I think when I travel nowadays, I can basically do my job from anywhere, and I can be at a gig and do, I can sit on a work trunk, and open up a computer or whatever and get things done. I think everybody has to find a way to unwind a little bit. I think your priorities change as life goes on, and I'm sure if in 40 years we could have this conversation, you'd agree. The things that are important to you, when I started in the industry, I couldn't get enough travel. I've done over 300 days, quite a few times in a year, and I have no desire to do that now. But I do like travel, and I do enjoy getting out. For me, going to seeing the show is exciting for me now. Once again, it's kind of full circle for me, because now I kind of see what we're doing on the backside, and I see the ultimate result of it. For me to unwind, I play music. I like to pick up my bass and, I'll learn something or play something or listen to some, music. I live on a ranch of about 30 acres, and we raise livestock, various horses, cows, you name it. And I can walk out the back door and be away from all the ohms, dBs, watts, and digital consoles, and I can be in a whole nother planet.
Right.
And I think you need that, But like I said, it's going to be different for everybody. And when I started, it wasn't all that big of a deal. I didn't think like that. But I think looking back, if you can learn to pace yourself, everybody wants that big career right now. They want to, I hear, be a mixer, a tour manager, a producer. All I can say is be ready to pace yourself to get there and do the things that'll earn you the experience and the knowledge, so that when you do get into that really cool job, you're ready.
It's a marathon.
Yeah.
Do you dress kind of the more farmer part? I mean, do you?
Yeah, I got coveralls and
You're
stuff.
like, I'd be more worried about coyotes if I were you.
Well, we got plenty of coyotes where I live, believe me.
And Phil's getting excited about the branding from the cattle.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's a very simple thing of just the way the quality of life changed for me from when I went from a 9-to-5 office job to working remotely. I'm not commuting 2.5 hours in a car anymore. So I'm immediately happier because I don't have to deal with the stress of traffic and really dumb Florida drivers. I also can do things like I live in Tampa, so I can go to the beach and work from the beach sometimes. I go to the pool at my house, and I work from the pool in the summer when it's nice and hot outside. I can take my dog for walks in the middle of the day, and she gets to hang out with me all the time instead of being stuck in a crate. Little simple, minute things make a huge difference in my happiness level, and that's been the biggest thing for me doing the switch to remote working that has been the ultimate happiness, and the reason why I don't think I'm ever going to go back to a desk job or a cubicle job or anything like that. Just, I can't. I'm extremely happy when I get to go out and do these small little minor things. And there's a joke on my team that I'm always driving because I'm a remote worker, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to go get lunch at this place, or hey guys, I'm going to go pick somebody up from the airport at this place. So it's still the joke that I'm always driving, but I'm driving at downtimes where there's not traffic too. But being a remote worker, I'm afforded those opportunities. Nobody's sitting there and being like, oh, you're leaving the office at 4, and you got in at 10 this morning. Nobody cares. You're getting the work done.
It's about the productivity. Well, the title is the benefits and the pitfalls, right? We wouldn't be doing you justice if we didn't talk about some of the pitfalls. I'll go ahead and kind of break the seal for a lot of the younger folks, well, I guess the older folks as well. It could be substance abuse, right? It would be very easy if you had a bottle to go drink whenever you wanted to, or smoke to go smoke, or do whatever you wanted to do. So I'm sure we could all agree that that would be a huge detriment to somebody working at home if you did not have that under control and did not know how to recognize it. But what are some of the other pitfalls that you could think of that might be a little taboo to talk about that we just want to be real and share with our students?
I'll take this one first because there's one. About 3 months after I first started working remotely, I went through a pretty terrible relationship separation, and I was in my head constantly. There was nobody there that I could talk to, so I was immediately, I'd think in my head, and that would affect my work. It wasn't any of the best work that I did, and that was really hard. You'd stare at the same four walls. I mean, no matter where you would walk to or try to do something, you still didn't have anybody to talk to. So that also goes on to the fact of find a support system when you work remotely of people you can talk to. Your team members, I mean, they're there for you, especially somebody like Chance that has the company. I mean, he's good friends with these guys that he's also business partners with. You can talk to these guys about this kind of stuff. They've been through it too. They can help.
How many of you are in a relationship? All right, and then at home, raise your hand. No, I can't see those guys. Sorry. I would say talk about it first. If you know, because you guys are going to graduate, you're going to split. Maybe you're not going to go to the same city. Talk about what happens, right?
Yeah, I mean,
before it happens.
Yeah, we talked about, having a hard time disconnecting when you're there. I mean, if you're in a relationship and you have a partner, they're going to say, hey, why are you in your office at 6 or 7 o'clock at night? I want to watch this TV show down here on the bed. And you have to set those clear guidelines and be very defined about that of like, hey, I work remotely. I have this client that's over in California. I have this client in the UK, and I need to be online at this time. I work very closely with a lot of teams in India, so I'm online very early in the morning, sometimes 5, 6 in the morning, to work with those guys, and you just have to account for that as well.
This isn't very controversial, but if you travel a lot, especially in South America, sometimes getting really good internet can be a problem. So in Rio, the fastest in my building, the fastest I could get was 15 down and like 2 or 3 up, which isn't, it could be worse, but it's enough to, stream video and do everything, but it's just barely enough. If I want to download something and it's a few gigs, I'm going to have to wait. And honestly, in other parts of Brazil, you might get like 5. So it just depends. Like there's actually a great website, nomadlist.com, and you've seen it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you can basically set all these filters. You're like, I want to live in a safe area near a beach with 50 megabits or faster internet in the Western Hemisphere or the Eastern Hemisphere, and it will list all those countries and tell you what it costs there to live each month. So yeah, check it out, nomadlist.com. Very, very useful website.
And if you don't mind me jumping in, something I want you to take note to that you've probably experienced too is, especially in our VR world, is upload speed. A lot of times they're like, I got to turn in my project at 11:59, and I'll get this message of, it was taking 2 hours to upload. You got to know your upload, because most people advertise their download speeds. Make sure you're asking about the upload speeds as well.
I think my biggest pitfall is the dang rooster. That's. I mean, I just,
Well, Michael said he's up at 5 a.m., so maybe we can get some help on that farm.
Don't worry, I'll come get him for you off the farm.
Well, on the technical side, I do live a bit out in the sticks, and it took forever to get fiber optic even close where I could have a decent internet. That was after electricity. That was
still in the 1900s, though, right?
So, anyway, I think for me, I've had to really work hard at disconnecting. It's so easy to walk up to my computer and just see if I got an email.
Hardest man, hardest working man in show business. Right?
Pardon me?
I said you're the hardest working man in show business. Right?
Oh, I'm trying to change my image a little bit. Can you help me with that?
I can. I can. I've already. So we'll connect that to farming somehow.
Music and farming. Yeah. Okay. So, I find that to have been a big challenge for me, and I don't have a problem staying focused. Some people might say that, they can drift a little easier when they're not around an office environment or in the middle of a working project. I've just never had that problem. I'm the opposite. Come on, where's the off switch? It's got to be here somewhere. You just turn it off for a minute. So that's something I've had to learn to do. I don't know that that's a pitfall. It is a pitfall, really.
I think one of the things that maybe the three of us have in common a little bit, being a little bit on the older side, is we did all of our stupid stuff before the internet and before Facebook. And so if you don't mind talking just a little bit about
stupid stuff?
About stupid stuff and the digital hygiene that could happen when we were still a little bit younger and stupider. And you like that? Stupid. because that could be a huge pitfall if somebody's Googling you. I tell you what, my friend has a saying, it doesn't matter if your friends can find you, it matters if Google can find you. And when I Googled Phil here, the whole first couple of pages is this man right here. So what do you think about if you did find that, or I'll just let you take it, digital hygiene, man?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to this, actually connected to productivity. One simple thing I did to stay focused was on my browser, move the Facebook tab from spot number 1 shortcut to the last. So it actually didn't show. So I'd have to click down and click over. And in that process, remember why I was hiding it. But in terms of controlling that, I mean, we just started talking about this before we went live. The question I probably get the most from new clients is, there's something on the internet about me that I'm trying to hide. How do I get rid of it? Can you work some magic? Sometimes it's possible, but more often than not, it's not immediately possible. There are things you can do to, hide some of, things that are out there. But certainly, just remember that whatever you put out there, I don't have the position of like a traditional teacher that's going to say, be very careful about what you post and what you don't post. If you wouldn't send it to your grandmother, don't post it online. No. That's nonsense. In my opinion, if I think every student, at least that I've met this week, I've been incredibly impressed that every student has a strong sense of what their brand is. And even if they don't yet, they know that they're working on it so that within a month they will. Stay true to who you are, because, stay true to that and post in a way that's authentic to who you are. I'm not going to tell you what to do and what not to do, but I will tell you that people you don't know, like we didn't know each other, you looked me up before you met me, and it was a positive experience when you met me in real life, because what you discovered about me was true to who I am in real life.
Exactly.
From the way that I write my tweets to the articles that pop up and all not everything is perfect out there that has me in it. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff from years ago when I was doing my Charlie Sheen social media contest that I probably, if I had control of, would have done differently. But, there's really embarrassing videos with shaggy hair on YouTube. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad. I know.
I heard Twitter can get you in trouble.
Yeah, all these things can get you in trouble, Exactly. I got fired because of social media before I started my internship. But just know that all of this is contributing to the first impression that people are making of you when you're not in the room. And so you do have control over that. And I have been gently reminding everyone of that this week, that in fact you do have control over how people consume you online.
That is truth, my friend.
And I think, he's talking about people observing what you post online on Twitter, Facebook, and, there's definitely like a happy balance. We're not saying that you can never post anything political, but, when I look at, if I'm looking at someone's page or something, I want to employ them, whatever, and I see they're posting something political, it's not what their political beliefs are, it's how do they deal with other people with different beliefs. Do they treat them with respect, or do they try to say, oh, I believe in this way and you believe the opposite, therefore you want something bad and I want something good. No, typically, regardless of your political opinion, people typically want to come to the same result. Everyone wants to have a good country, live in a good country with, people that are fed and everything. But just because you have a different way of getting there as someone else doesn't mean they're bad and they want bad things. No, they just have a different opinion on how you get there. So treat people with respect. And it won't really matter if you have a different political opinion than someone who's looking at your page or whatnot, Twitter.
Very good. Well, it looks like we've got some awesome questions brewing in your heads. I can see the smoke coming out of the ears and everything. So raise your hand if you've got a question in mind, and our awesome hosts are going to find a microphone for you and give you the mic so we can make sure that everybody out in our internet land can hear you. And when you ask the question, please give us your name and what degree you're with. That would be totally awesome.
Hi, I'm asking questions for the online students.
Awesome. Thank you, online students.
Amy Monks, she's a media communications major. Would like to know what to look for when trying to find a good co-working space. This is for Phil.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there that are popping up because I think people are realizing, wow, there's really a need for somewhere for people to go that's not home, where you're surrounded by other people that are working independently, but even just being in that environment can be really inspiring. So what to look for, I would say, I think a requirement is great internet. I think they all have that. If they don't, well, they're in trouble. I personally look for the bigger co-working brands because I traveled to so many places in such a short period of time. A company like WeWork is probably the biggest one out there right now in the major cities. It's useful for me that they have locations all across the world. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Mexico City. I emailed them a few weeks before and said, hey, I'd love to come by and check it out. I work out of Santa Monica, but I'd love to come check it out. They said, great, why don't you do a lunch and learn? And I said, great, I'll just show up and meet a whole bunch of new people. That was an opportunity that was created just because of that, that experience. And so I went and did a short presentation and, met 20 new people in Mexico City that I'm still in touch with. But because, next month I'm going to go work from Paris and Amsterdam and London. I go back to London all the time. So I even have friends at those co-working locations. So for me, I choose them based on where they have other locations, simply based on the fact that I travel. But I think go visit them before you sign up for a subscription and see if it's a cool vibe. I happen to like ones that are decorated nicely because I have to sit there and work, So I think a lot of the co-working spaces have figured it out, what people want. Go check it out for yourself and decide if it's a good fit and if, what the kind of culture is there before you take the plunge.
That is a great, Phil. Looks like we've got a question here.
How's it going? My name is Mario Lopez. I'm in the entertainment business degree. One of the questions that I had is just like, what are some of the baby steps into like starting to get in work remotely?
Don't go to work.
Hunger is a great incentive.
That's like 100% truthful. Don't go to work or say you're sick and then pop online and do work. Or
Don't
work
lie.
it out if you have a 9 to 5 job, work it out, talk to your boss and say, hey, I'd like to do 1 day from the house. And whatever day will work into that company's schedule, figure that out. But you ease yourself into it. You figure out if it's something that you really think you're going to be good at. I worked a 9 to 5 job for 5 years before I became a remote worker. And in that time, I went from working 1 day to 2 days to 3 days to they just never expected to see me because they knew the work was going to get done. And that's the point where I was like, okay, I don't need to work anymore because they just know I'm going to get stuff done.
I would say, since there's only two choices, working for yourself or working for somebody else, you can kind of blend the two, I think. One of the easiest steps would be become an assistant for somebody, a virtual assistant, and so that you could help somebody like Chance and say, I could manage your online calendar, reply to your contacts and things like that, and that way you could help somebody else be productive until you figured out what you've exactly got to offer them. I think one of the things that nobody wants to hear, Leon, you can give us an amen on this one if you want to, is trying to get the boss to figure out what you could do from home, right? You don't have time to figure out what I could do for you from home. So come prepared, saying I could get your schedules together. I could call your meetings 10 minutes beforehand and make sure they're still online for it, so you never have to have a dropped meeting or anything like that. Let them know what you could do for them.
Well, I think in my case, my employer they're such good people. Very trusting, and due to this, how I came about with Clair through a whole nother previous company, it made sense for all parties to work in the capacity we're at. So I supplement that with travel. We have several offices, and I like to get around and hang with everybody personally. But I do a lot of meetings on, conference calls and sales meetings, and I don't have a problem getting things done. You do have to be trusted, that's part of it.
Well, Leon, as a manager, what would you want to hear or not want to hear if somebody is approaching you about, hey, I think maybe I could design your lighting systems from here, or?
Well, actually, because the people that work on my team, not road people, but off-road people that help me do logistics and scheduling and that, we're not in the same place. I have 2 people in Nashville, 2 people in Pennsylvania, and myself. So it's kind of 5 of us that are intimately involved in the road staff administrative part of it. So, you know, we just have a way we work it out, and communication is not that hard. We get a hold of each other, we talk. If we have to conference, we get together on a phone, and, you know, business can go on, you know.
Certainly. Great questions. And have we got another onliner? Do I see that?
Yeah, Leah Lemoyne Portia would like to know, sorry, I have to find it. She just wants to know if you think that companies working remotely are a growing trend.
Seems to be.
Yes, for sure.
You know, I would say, as a former career advisor here at Full Sail, when people would ask me what they want to do, I tell them it's kind of like fishing, right? You either know where you want to go fishing, and go fishing there and do your research on what kind of fish are in that pond, or decide what kind of fish you want to catch and do the research on where those fish are, right? And so to get into this remote work, I think first it makes sense to do the research on what companies hire remote workers. Right? You wouldn't go to a toothpaste factory trying to work remotely because they need everybody there, right? If you're trying to work a VR gig, it doesn't matter where we are, right?
Yeah, I think it's a growing trend, working remotely. I also think it's a growing trend to work as a contractor. In the U.S., it's as a 1099 contractor. So that's, you know, there's laws around this, but that's essentially the ability for me to hire you for a project on a contract. You're responsible for paying your own taxes. Don't forget about that. You know, you're responsible for all of that, your own healthcare, all of that. But you also, the very beneficial perk of that is being able to write things off that you require for business. So in fact, you know, I've got people that work for me that prefer being a contractor. I think if you look back the last few years, it almost has had like a negative connotation to it. It's like, oh, well, I want to be a salaried employee. I don't want to be a contractor. I think that's starting to change. I think when people realize about write-offs and, you know, location independence, all of these wonderful things, I think that people like me are starting to hire people like you as a contractor, contract labor, and it's not a bad thing. I think I was going to say employees, but they're not employees. I have about 25 contractors, and guess how many employees I have? One. Guess who he is? Me. You know, it's just not how I do work in my business. So it's not a bad thing. I think we're going to see more remote working, and we're going to see more 1099 contractor type work.
Yeah, no, I know in our company we have quite a few remote people in the sales capacity, especially. And you know, the cool thing that we found about it is anybody that's in a management or sales capacity, we like them to visit the clients. So now we've got people in LA, Dallas, Denver, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. So we have an outreach of folks that can get to clients on multiple occasions. So we utilize that as a face-to-face company-client relationship. So it's kind of worked out in a kind of a cool way on that end.
So talking about that, 1099s was the biggest surprise when I was working in Nashville, and I had just did a job, and I was like, why is everybody asking my social security number now in October, November, and December, right? So that brings up an interesting point of health insurance. So Mike, you know, now that, because we've got some others working for their companies, but what have you done health insurance-wise or that kind of stuff? I think working as a 1099 type of person, a contract person, affords you a little bit of flexibility on shopping around and not just being locked into whatever your company provides.
So from that perspective, I take FireEye's insurance and healthcare, and that's what I roll with. But I know many people that search and shop around and choose many different insurances, and there's so many options out there. I mean, I know at one point I ended up just hopping on Cobra insurance. At one point in time many years ago. So I'm sure Phil can talk to this too, because he's got 25 contractors that probably all have health insurance somewhere.
Yeah, this is probably the less glamorous part about it, and kind of one of the tedious parts is finding that, because Well, I'm from Canada, where we don't have to worry about this, but I made the decision to live here, so I do have to worry about it. But actually, not to keep bringing back to co-working spaces, but many of the big ones offer health insurance options, which many people don't know, which is why I'm mentioning it. So I have a few friends that have explored that. Ask around, particularly when you meet people out in the industry you're working in, or meet people at Hall of Fame that work independently. Ask them for recommendations. All the best recommendations I've ever gotten are from me connecting with other people who do it, that have done the research for you. Why would you spend time on that? Let someone else do it and then just ask them. So yeah, just ask around and see, but it is kind of an annoying part of it.
To touch on that, I know Freelancers Union also offered insurance along with like co-working spaces.
Very cool.
I'm on the leave the country plan if something bad happens. So.
Me too.
Hi, I'm Tim Thiessen. I'm in the Creative Writing for Entertainment BFA. And I freelance in two fields, the comic book industry and writing marketing copy. And comic books is a very insular, friendly community where my editor just resolves the emails to me with, "Hey, dude." But writing copy, I'll get very suit and tie style emails. So what are some things you do to sort of change hats and keep your tone straight when you're blasting through emails at 9 in the morning?
Sleep in.
Great question. I always read them out loud, from my perspective. Formality, I always try to match it, and I always try to match what my boss is giving me. If they write, "Hey, Steve," I'm going to write, "Hey, Leon," right? If he just says, "blah, blah, blah, blah," then I'm just going to write, "blah, blah, blah, blah." And so I always match tone, but...
I was going to say, I have the same tone that I use regardless. So whether you're addressing me as "Hey, dude," or you're addressing me as Michael, I'm going to readdress you by your name, and then we're going to go through the points. Now, some people find that annoying that I talk to, but it's business formal for me, and that's how I want people to know me, and that's my brand that I'm going through, and that's how people know I'll respond to emails.
The great thing about working in VR and actually being represented by an avatar that's being motion captured is I can be meeting with like a multi-million-dollar venture capitalist, speak very formally and businesslike, but I'm in my underwear the entire time.
I really like emojis. Even if you're a professional, I still use them because I have a big personality, and if I just need emojis to get it across. Now, I don't go crazy. I don't put them all throughout, but you'll probably see one or two in an email from me.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think the written word, in any case, you have to, in a professional environment, you just got to kind of sense that and know how to respond and take the high road. If you're getting something a little awkward, just take the high road, You can play down something in a very polite way without being rude back or whatever, just.
And if you say something wrong, honestly, if you apologize, they'll probably think more of you because the fact that you apologize than if you wouldn't have made that mistake in the first place and not had to apologize. Because there's a lot of people that lack humility, so when someone displays humility after making a mistake, they might think better of you.
Yes, as long as they feel it sincere, I would say.
Yes.
That's great. Well, guys, I cannot thank you enough for showing up. I hope we've given you a bit of insight. We tried to stick with some of the positives, but definitely hit some of the pitfalls, because working remote can make you or break you. And nobody wants to work with somebody broken. And so I think a lot of this as we move out, is to keep in mind. We've got self-preservation, keep your schedules tight, put in some good exercise in doing it, and have fun with it. Be yourself, and be respectful to everybody you're working with. And I think just be on time, whether it's virtually or in person. I think that's a big thing as well. So thank you guys so much for coming. Let's give a round of applause for our awesome panelists. And for everybody in internet land, easy for me to say, right? Don't forget, we've got our red carpet for our Hall of Fame inductees, so make sure you tune in for that. And I'm Steve Kane. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for being here at Hall of Fame 8.